Joining us now is the Shadow Justice Secretary, Steve Reid. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. Talking about Partygate there, so let's talk about Beergate. At the time, I think it was March, your leader said that because the Prime Minister was being investigated by the police, he should resign. Your leader is being investigated by the police.
The difference here is that we knew at that point that the Prime Minister had been breaking his own laws.
How did we know?
Well, we'd seen Allegra Stratton, if you remember, the Prime Minister's press secretary, in that clip that was circulated very widely, laughing about a party that had gone on the night before
Prime Minister
Downing
didn't
Street.
know anything about it.
The Prime Minister came down to the House of Commons the next day. It was a Wednesday, so it was PMQs, and he told the country he shared their anger what had been said. It later turned out the Prime Minister was at that party. So he had been breaking the law, he'd been lying, and ultimately he got fined for it. There is a world of difference between what was going on in Downing Street, where we now know 50 people have had fines, including the Prime Minister, for breaking the lockdown rules that the Prime Minister set for the country. 12 different parties investigated, beer and alcohol wheeled in suitcases, invitations issued. The world of difference between that and what happened in Durham, where Keir Starmer and his entourage, who were up there for a campaigning event, stopped to have some food and a drink and then continued with their work. Absolutely no equivalence. But what Keir Starmer has done, and I think it's the right thing to do, because he wants to show that all politicians are not the same, he has said that if he were found to have breached the rules, he would resign. Now, he's adamant he hasn't. I absolutely believe there was no breach. There's no similarity between those two scenarios I just described, Durham and what was going on at number 10 Downing Street. But he would resign if that was the case. What that shows is that Keir Starmer believes that lawmakers cannot be lawbreakers. The Prime Minister believes that the laws are for the little people, and if he breaks them, he should get away with it. You cannot have, in a democracy, the leader of our country setting rules that he thinks don't apply to him. Because what if you're a criminal, and you're a criminal and you're being asked to obey the law, and you can just throw back, well, the Prime Minister doesn't obey the laws that he sets, why should I obey the laws? It just sets so much the wrong message to our country. We have to have integrity at the heart of public life. Keir Starmer showed he has integrity, where the Prime Minister, I'm afraid, has none.
He's a former Director of Public Prosecutions. He knows that syllables matter. He said because the Prime Minister was being investigated by the police, he should resign, and yet he is not abiding by the same code of conduct.
Well, as I just said, the circumstances are very different. We knew the Prime Minister had broken the rules. We know Keir Starmer hasn't. So
we didn't know that he had broken the rules. We had to.
Well,
surely we have to wait to find out what the police think. We're not judge and jury, are we?
We're not judge and jury, and you're quite right that we have to wait to see what the police have to say. But it was clear the Prime Minister was breaking the rules, and indeed he's had a fine. He may have a sequence of further fines for what he's done. I don't believe Keir Starmer will get a fine, actually, because I don't believe that what happened there was anything other than a work event which was entirely within the rules. That is so different from issuing party invitations and bringing in booze and a sound system that they did at number 10.
The point is that he is saying that the Prime Minister should have resigned because he was being investigated.
Yes, but the difference is we knew the Prime Minister was breaking the rules.
But
Keir Starmer isn't.
We didn't know.
Well, we did.
We had to wait for the police investigation.
The difference, Kay, is
but he wasn't prepared to wait for the police investigation.
It's a fair point that you're making, and the police had not found him in breach, but we knew he was in breach.
Yeah, but Keir Starmer was judging what the police might decide.
Well, rightly.
No, you can't. He was a former Director of Public Prosecution. You can't do that.
Yes, that's right. But we know that the difference is immense. Holding regular parties at number 10 Downing Street during the lockdown that the Prime Minister pretended he hadn't been at, and then it turns out he was. He'd stood in Prime Minister's questions and said he was angry at what Allegra Stratton, his press secretary, had said about a party which he said hadn't happened, and we later find out he'd been at it. He was lying through his teeth to the British public. And it is that disreputable behaviour that brings all of politics and all politicians into disrepute. Keir Starmer is sending a clear message that he is not like that. He has integrity. If he is issued with a fine for breaching the rules, he will resign. The Prime Minister should adopt exactly that same position if he wants to uphold the integrity of standards in public life.
How do you feel about the Northern Ireland Protocol being ripped up?
Well, this is a really dangerous move for the government to want to make at this stage. And we need to remember how the Northern Ireland Protocol came into being in the first place. Boris Johnson negotiated it. It was part of the Brexit deal that back in 2019 the Prime Minister came and said was an oven-ready Brexit deal. It was a good deal for Britain. Everything in it was sorted and resolved, and we must vote for it. And indeed, the public did go out and vote for that Brexit deal. Further down the line, it turns out, as often happens with this Prime Minister, he'd lied. He said there would be no border down the Irish Sea over his dead body. There only would be a border down the Irish Sea over his dead body. In fact, there is a border down the Irish Sea because the protocol requires there to be one, the protocol that Boris Johnson signed.
So
now,
something has to happen, though, doesn't it?
Something has to happen. And if he wants to get rid of it, he has to negotiate. He has to negotiate his way around that. He negotiated it in place. He has to negotiate it out. If he does what he's threatening to do now, this is where the dangerous part of it comes in, Kay. If he rips it up, he is ripping up an international treaty. That will damage the UK's reputation internationally, but it will also damage the economy because he could end up by triggering a trade war with the European Union, our biggest trading partner on the planet, which will add further misery to the economy, which is already stalling. We've already got the highest inflation and the lowest growth of any major economy. He would make that worse. But there's a second consequence, and that's President Biden has said that if the British government, Boris Johnson, does anything to damage the Good Friday Agreement, which by ripping up the protocol he would be damaging, that's the agreement that brought peace to Northern Ireland, then the United States will not have a trade agreement with the United Kingdom either. So the other biggest economy on the planet, other than the European Union, also will not have a trade agreement with the United Kingdom. Does Boris Johnson really want to isolate our economy? Does he really want to enter trade wars with two of our biggest trading partners and further damage economy at a time when people are already finding it difficult to make ends meet? We've got a high tax and low growth economy under this Conservative government because they've not invested for 12 years. If they further cause damage to our economy, then the cost of living crisis we're seeing now will get worse and worse and worse over years to come. We can't allow that.
Michael Gove says that won't happen.
Well, he's absolutely wrong, because if you sign an international treaty, if two countries in the world sign an international treaty and one of them rips it up, that state becomes a pariah. Why would anyone else on the planet believe a word that state
something
said?
has to be done because it's not working.
It has to be negotiated. Now, it's not working, and it was Boris Johnson that negotiated it. So first of all, I'd like to see Boris come and stand in front of the House of Commons and apologise for telling us that this was a good deal when, in fact, it's a botched deal, because he signed it and he pretended it was good when I suspect all along he knew that it wasn't. Then I'd like him to sit down with our European partners and negotiate a way around this that removes trade barriers between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but does not breach the Good Friday Agreement. And the key point in that is that there must not be a border on the island of Ireland, because it was that border that triggered the troubles that lasted for decades and resulted in so much loss of life. Nobody wants to go back to that. Now, Boris Johnson got us in this mess. Boris Johnson can negotiate his way out of it.
And Labour also feels then far more than just trade, that there shouldn't be a border on the island of Ireland at all.
Well, the Good Friday Agreement, to which the United Kingdom is a signatory, says that there should not be a hard border. There's a border, obviously, between Northern Ireland, part of the United Kingdom, and the Republic.
Yeah, but my point is, should Northern Ireland be part of the United Kingdom?
Well, that is a matter for the people of Northern Ireland to determine.
What's Labour's view?
Well, the Belfast Agreement is absolutely crystal clear on this, that the fate of Northern Ireland is in the hands of the people of Northern Ireland, and that's exactly as it should be. It was a key part of that agreement,
and there should be a border referendum if they want it.
It's entirely up to the people of Northern Ireland. It's not for me, it's for the people of Northern Ireland to decide that.
And a final thought, as far as the Queen's speech is concerned, was it meaty enough for you?
No, it was really thin gruel. I was genuinely shocked when we got given. Well, we heard Prince Charles reading out the Queen's speech and then saw copies of it afterwards. We're in the middle of the biggest cost of living crisis in a generation. People can't afford to make ends meet. They're having to choose between heating their homes and eating and feeding their families. And there was nothing in it to help. We had a few weeks ago, I think I talked to you about it at the time, the Chancellor's spring statement that left the average household £2,600 a year worse off. Now, given the pain that is being inflicted on households at the moment, you would think in a big set-piece event like the Queen's speech, putting out the legislative agenda for the coming session, potentially 2 years, there would at least be something of significance in there about the single biggest crisis we're facing. But there was absolutely nothing. I mean, what we would have liked to have seen is plans to give people real help now, and the windfall tax that my colleague Rachel Reeves first proposed on the energy companies that have made £3-4 billion surplus profits above and beyond what they expected. A windfall tax on just a part of that could cut household energy bills right now by up to £600. Real help when it's needed, but from this government we got nothing.
Out of time. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme. Thank you.